Good evening, late afternoon, whatever we want to call it. I'd like to call to order the Committee of a Whole for October 14th. If the clerk could please read the roll.
Councilmember Wood.
Here.
Councilmember Spatafor.
Present.
Councilmember Spitzley. Councilmember Dunbar. Councilmember Hussein. Councilmember Jackson. Councilmember Washington. Councilmember Garza.
We have a quorum. Councilmember Spitzley, as the viewers might know, we had discussed this before. Councilmember Spitzley's father passed away, and she is in Florida right now. They had taken her father there for a burial. So with that, we have the minutes of October 7th and September 30th. Vice President Spatafor.
Madam President, I move the minutes from October 7th.
We have a motion on the minutes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Vice President Spatafor?
What was the second one? I'm sorry, my
September 30th.
I move the minutes of September 30th. Apologize, my computer's.
That's all right. We have a motion on the minutes for September 30th. Are there any questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. At this point, okay.
No man is
Just-
silent, Councilman.
That's all right. At this point, we have an opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make public comment? If you would, please come up to the podium. You will have 3 minutes. Give us your name for the record.
Loretta Stanaway, and I would like to just briefly talk about brownfields. And I see this plan for the 500 block and the redevelopment proposals for it. I guess I'm at this point where this is what I have to say. We have continually heard good projects after good projects after good projects come before this group. And these look like good projects. And I suppose they will be good projects. But they're talking again about a 19 to 23-year brownfield for one phase, a 20 to 24-year brownfield for another phase. I guess I just am at a point where I want to ask one question. When do we stop dishing out money that we need to run this city and provide services and provide for infrastructure and provide for the citizens to get what they're paying for and aren't receiving? That's my question. When? When do we say enough is enough? If a project is going forward, it goes on its own merits or it doesn't go. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other comments at this time, so we are going to continue with a presentation that was started a few council meeting or committee of a wholes ago, and that's with economic development and planning. And if Bob and the crew would come forward and take a seat at the table. We got through one topic, and I'm not sure we completely got through it, but we said we did, and that was the facade grants. And so we are now moving forward. Okay.
The chairs have been improved dramatically down here. Congratulations.
Well, there was a purpose in that, didn't you?
I can sit here all night now and talk. They're very comfy. Madam Chair, I had taken some of the topics that, I can do it two ways, it doesn't matter to me. I could speak for about 10 minutes on a series of items that people may find interesting, questions that I've heard recently.
Okay.
I'm also, I really appreciated the comments that were just at the podium. I mean, just to respond quickly, I do think it's important from I respect the perspective, and I certainly hear it all the time.
Thank you.
Number one, I just continue to want to clarify that we don't give anyone money. I actually wish we did as an economic developer. Most cities do. Most other states give land and everything else. Michigan and Lansing don't do that at all. I think we should, because I think there's great benefit to the community. Economic development, I understand that we get, I guess, known as, and we are, about business and developers. I just ask everybody, I know you understand it, but the reason why our profession and the industry exists is these are a means to an end, and I don't think we should forget that part. Economic development is about community and about people. I mean, that's why we do these things. And specifically about brownfields, it's an interesting question. How do we reach 20 years or 23 years or, God forbid, 30 years or these kind of numbers? And it's pretty straightforward. We, you know, however much the eligible activity, public infrastructure, contamination cleanup, demolition, these kinds of issues, however much that costs is covered by however much in new taxes is going to be generated by a project that otherwise wouldn't have happened unless for the incentives. If you kind of get the chicken and egg there. And I realize people could argue the project would have happened anyways, but that's not my experience. Maybe in a township on a greenfield site, which is sprawl. But here, where taxes are higher and parking doesn't exist and there's a blighted building and contamination underground, and even that is sort of the start of the challenges that we face. I personally, you know, and I think you've pretty much been there too, that as an urban policy in trying to, an environmental policy, if you want to look at, we think that there needs to be a partnership. And so we capture the new taxes and reimburse their taxes. No developer, Pat Gillespie at the Meyer project right now is paying every penny of his taxes, or will be. You know, everyone pays their full taxes. We merely are capturing and reimbursing out of the new taxes for a certain period of time. And we argue that, what if we didn't do that? Of course, we argue that there wouldn't have been a project, and then, I mean, that's the worst case scenario for a budget and for building new revenue into a city. The project wouldn't have happened. The project would have continued to decline, continued to depreciate. And what about the properties around it? A great example is the Arbaugh building where our original LEDC office was. And if anyone recalls, I do, because I was in that office, what it looked like 15, 16 years ago on that block. It was nearly entirely vacant on both sides of the street. The city decided to do an OPRA, which froze the taxes, and then the improvements weren't taxed for 12 years. And what did we get out of it? Well, you can say, well, wait a minute, we lost all the taxes from 12 years of the improvements not being taxed. Really? Well, if we didn't do that, the building would have remained empty with an aluminum siding, by the way. And all the properties across the street, very unlikely that they would have been redeveloped in nice businesses. Certainly 150 or so new residents wouldn't have moved into that building who all paid income tax. And AECOM went in, which was 100 plus, you know, employees who all paid income tax. So, I mean, and today, by the way, 12 years goes by, or even 20 years very quickly, and then that property is paying taxes here fully, rather than 20 years later, still down here in all the properties. Anyway, I understand that some people would not agree with that, but I mean, that is the facts of these incentives and my opinion about the benefit to them.
Vice President Spatafor.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up because the Arbaugh is definitely an improvement, but they've been getting a lot of complaints. They're actually using a lot of city resources. The fire marshal's there all the time. Their elevator hasn't worked for the better part of a decade. I've got friends there who have now a equal housing complaint with the federal government against that building operator. So I guess maybe we should be a little more judicious about who we invite in for those wonderful opportunities in our city, since you brought it up.
Well, Richard, I guess I won't say the name out loud, but the building owner there, if I have no sympathy for a business owner or a developer, a building owner who isn't paying attention to the law and who isn't providing a high-quality service. The Oprah on there that has expired 5 or 6 years ago maybe, so we have no, clawback or type of thing that we can do. But I'm entirely unsympathetic to that developer, and I would presume that that's why we have a inspection department and would get down there. I mean, I can't even imagine how they get away with it, an elevator not working. I don't get it.
I guess now I just want it on the record, so thank you for that response.
I think one of the things, though, which the reality is yes, we are paying back the developer for eligible environmental issues or public improvements that we're doing, but there is not money going into the general fund for the normal business of running the city, which is police and fire and those types of things. And it is a trade-off. There is a trade-off looking at what is the revenue coming in. I mean, you said 30 years and sort of gulped. The accident fund is a perfect example. I mean, that is a over 30-year project that's
Yes.
there. But who would have developed the power station if it hadn't been them?
You're spot on in your comment. I mean, I think it's a great argument about the services. Now, about 90% of the brownfields that we together examine and approve all release at least 10% right out of the gate of new revenue as well. And it would be an interesting calculation. I've never really, does that cover police and fire to a mostly residential project? I mean, it's a very interesting
Well, maybe we
proposition to
can
take a look at.
tax our internal auditor to take a look at that.
Send them on that research. That'd be kind of interesting. The Arbaugh would be a perfect, well, actually not perfect because that's an Oprah, but another project would be the boys' training school site. How about? Pardon me? Yeah. Of course, it wasn't a neighborhood. It was a horribly contaminated, vacant property that, I don't know how many, probably several hundred people living there, maybe, I don't know. And as far as the power station goes, I'm always thankful to your leadership, Chairperson Wood, because as you know very well, accident fund was choosing. And that's another part of our problem in incentives is businesses and developers have a choice what to do. And accident fund was well on their way to choosing to move out of the city and to go to, frankly, Delta Township, or there was a suburb in Milwaukee. They had bought a building there. And so you got now not 550 jobs retained, but 800. And I would argue that all the buildings, all of Pat Gillespie's apartments, the LBC, even Michigan Avenue, the loft. And by the way, the Ides only approached us to redo the Knapp's building rather than tearing it down, which is the direction they were going toward. They literally came in my office the first day. I clearly remember it and said, "We never thought you guys could do it for the power station. Maybe you could do it for Knapp's building." And we did. So the enormity of the overall impact, net impact, if you will, to me is incalculable. I just don't think I shudder to think what downtown would be without that project.
But I think
it changed the psychology of our city too, by the way. It made us optimistic, and I think we suddenly dreamed what we could do instead of saying what we couldn't do.
But I think one of the things that we did learn is that at one point under the Hollister administration, we didn't do Oprah's and brownfields in the TIF because we realized what impact that might have on that, and we did suffer some with that.
Well, I just, as usual, I'm being completely just wearing it all on my sleeve. I worked at the MEDC during those years, and of course, Mayor Hollister was amazing. JNL, GM, the ball stadium. I mean, he's a legend, and nothing short of that. I think he saved the city, basically. But I will say at the MEDC at that time, we saw, for whatever reason, Kalamazoo, Traverse City, Grand Rapids, Detroit, Flint, who were very, very active and aggressive with incentives. Lansing wasn't. And I think that we took the city to another level the last 15 years. And by the way, it was during the Great Recession as well. So I think we did the right thing. I think the city would be in I know it sounds counterintuitive, but I really believe that the city would be in very deep financial shape right now, if not even worse than that, if it weren't for all the projects that you rightfully approved, and for the most part use incentives. And for the most part now, most of those incentives are already coming off, and we have a much, much better city here because of it.
I have Vice President Spatafor, Councilmember Hussein, and Councilmember Washington.
Thank you. Bob, thank you very much. I really have appreciated a lot of the projects that you guys have put together. And you just asked and said something that was going to be my question.
Okay.
I've asked it a few times, and maybe things get lost in the shuffle, but how long have we been doing brownfields in the city of Lansing? And which of those projects now are back paying taxes to the city and not to the project? And I'd like to know that, to see, because we hear, you know, our public commenter, I won't address you by name, but we hear, you know, we're not getting anything out of them. And I see the curve. I understand how it works, that you pay, and, you know, I've sat on the school board and watched that those taxes came to us, so I get that they're still paying their
More
taxes.
kids were in your schools.
Right, exactly. But the question I have is, how many of these brownfields that we've doled out are then now back on the tax rolls, paying taxes? How much revenue is being generated? You know, I know you have all of that.
Well, I probably have some
Okay.
decent answer, and I promise you that we can fill into the detail of it. But we have approved 78 brownfield projects over the last, now I'm ballparking this, but 25-ish kind of years, maybe 22 years, something like that, Chris. 1999 was the first one. So since 1999, we together have approved 78 brownfields. My understanding is right now there's something like 26, 28, somewhere right in that range of active brownfield TIFs where we are still capturing. So what happened to the other 45 or so? Most of them would be successful projects where the TIF has come off. There would certainly be some in there that never occurred. And again, I'll just remind people, even in that worst case scenario, that did not cost the city any money whatsoever, because either we're only reimbursing for new revenue. So if they didn't do the project and they did some kind of activity on there, tore something down, they don't get reimbursed. They paid for it and they don't get their money back, and we're still collecting the same amount of tax that we were before. So
And
that's,
just to interrupt you right there, an example is the Wonder Bread property that was purchased, that we had a brownfield on. They tore down the plant but never did what they were going to on that. That brownfield went away.
we didn't pay for it, that
Right.
person did, and they're out of luck.
May I follow up?
Yes.
So those 78, not all of them were 30-year projects then, correct?
Yeah, hardly, 30 year is extreme and rare. I don't know how many 30 years. I mean, I think they would just be a handful. I don't know if you know, Chris, specifically. I mean, it strikes me that most are in the 15-year type of range.
Because it would be, I would be very interested if you could provide,
Yeah.
not today, obviously, but some data on all of them that have been approved, and then which ones are no longer active,
for sure
which
do
one were
that, Chris.
successful projects. Just curious. I think there's some misconceptions out there, and I'd like to. I think it'd be useful to see that, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Councilmember Hussein, then Councilmember Washington.
Just a couple things. One, the LBRA has approved 76, or 78. We've approved 76, right? So we're actually moving forward, I think, tonight, setting a public hearing for 77, and then we haven't even taken a look at 78, but 76 have been actually approved. With that being said, I certainly understand why these tools are in the toolbox, particularly the state of Michigan. The urban core has deteriorated over a number of decades. We know that. It's much more difficult to develop in the urban core than it is outside of the urban core. Just as an example, we have approved brownfields as part of, actually this year, where just to go vertical, site prep and public infrastructure improvements and things like that are roughly $2 million per acre. If you develop in a green space or a greenfield, a lot of times that's $100,000 to $200,000 per acre.
Yeah.
So it is of significant cost to the developer, and they, it's not like they're reaching into their own pocket to pay this. They have to put their capital stack together. They have people that are, or entities that are financing. They have to pay back those loans over a number of years. And without brownfields, the rents, residentially, commercially, it'd be untenable. So understand why they're in place. That's why I've been supportive of a number of them. My problem is who's checking up. So we have worked very, very hard as part of this council to add local labor agreements, to add addendums, to vet the number of permanent jobs that are supposed to be created, to take a look at transparency in bidding, things like that. And so, because we are already seeing people coming back to, like some people like to call it the trough, but coming back to city council to ask for more, and it's very difficult to vet those when we don't know if the promises made have been promises kept. And so, you talk about income taxes as an example being paid on all, for all subcontractors and contractors. So I would like to see moving forward more of that information coming back to us so we can truly vet, again, promises made and promises kept.
Of course, I totally agree with you. I mean, we welcome, and so I do want to point out that we do audit every single incentivized project that the city does, and we have put them online. And in spreadsheets from every year, as best I can tell since I began, I don't know when I was, 2006, that every single year is online looking at those projects. We typically use...
And I hate to interrupt you, but isn't it a self-audit?
Well, yes and no. Let me,
Okay.
if I could explain that, because I think it's a great question. So what we ask them to do, what you put in agreements, almost typically for Oprah, Brownfield, 198s, all of it, is you have 2 years to do the project the way it's designed and agreed to in an agreement, a brownfield plan, development agreement, reimbursement agreement. You have 2 years to complete the project basically successfully. Investment, jobs, and maybe other requirements. We do, I absolutely promise you, since 2006, which is as far back as I can go, is we faithfully, every single one of those projects at that 2-year mark, audit those projects. Hannah just went through that as part of your project assignment earlier this year, looking at them. And what we have found far and away is most projects exceeded what they promised you. And then we do close them out. Obviously, we're eager to close them out. What is difficult is when one hasn't. So we need a 3rd year to examine it. We need, after a 4th year, and there's hardly been any, but we have to talk about it as a group. What do we do? Rescind, Home Street is on your thing tonight.
I
Well,
was just going to say,
right.
got one.
I mean, we
here.
have advocated rescinding that for a while, and thankfully now something good is on board. Temple Club is actually another. That's actually an Oprah we did rescind together after they weren't audited. So there are a couple examples, right, ironically in front of you tonight, that were rescinded based upon our audits. Now, I think where we've been criticized and have not had a great answer is really getting into audits, like being on the ground and looking at and stopping construction sites and surveying construction workers and really trying to really compare. They're all 1099, or a lot of them are 1099, and it gets very complicated fast, and it's frustrating to us. But we just plain don't have the resources to do that kind of intensive, that sort of extra layer of really deep monitoring and auditing. We really don't. I can tell you every one of our projects that you approved is up and whether they met the fundamental numbers as a project. But I have some difficulty going much deeper than that, admittedly. The city of Lansing, and we're grateful, approves $300,000 for economic development a year. And then the EDC adds on through admin captures of both Brownfield and Tifa a couple $100,000 more for a $500,000 total contract. So the city as a whole spends $500,000 a year on economic development. And like you, I wish, and the mayor, of course, we all wish and dream how much more we could do, that's for sure. Now, you've done a great job of adding on the facade program. And you have a placemaking program. So those are good, additions, couple $100,000. But, man, I just wish, Councilman, I totally agree with you, but I just do not have the resources to go to that extra depth. But I can assure you that every project has been audited and has been accounted for. And if they haven't happened, they were rescinded, or if the vast majority have exceeded the expectations, actually, vast majority.
Councilmember Washington and then Councilmember Jackson.
I just have a couple things. First, Bob, I think brownfields are the most misunderstood incentive out there. I'm people truly think we're writing a check or we're not collecting any taxes whatsoever, and developers right now are seen as something next to demon spawn anymore, but yet everybody wants a really cool place to live, and they want business, and they want it to be a cool city, but they also don't want to recognize that our land is crap. We're on an old manufacturing city. We have to clean it up. I would think environmentalists would be thrilled that it's getting cleaned up. And I sometimes just feel like I'm banging my head against the wall when people start in on brownfield incentives. I wish we had more incentives. I hear from developers that they go to other cities and they're just offering all kinds of things, and this is just all we have. And in Bath, DeWitt Township, and other places, they don't have to worry about this stuff. They have greenfield, and it's just not an issue. It took me a minute to figure it all out, too, and thank you. I learned a lot of it from you and Brian Jeffries and other folks, but it took me a minute, and it is frustrating, and sometimes I just clam up because I don't think people really want to understand it, to be frank. But as far as checking in on, the in-depth audit of income taxes and different things like that, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't there at some point some discussion of some Treasury staff doing that from the city?
Well, there's that, and at one point in HRCS, Guillermo Lopez, that was his responsibility, was to look at fair. He was part of Fair Housing and for Jobs, and he would actually go out and audit those. So I think it's a fair question to see. I don't think that responsibility has been taken away from HRCS, but do they have somebody filling that position?
Because I don't see how that would be LEAP's responsibility to do that.
It was there, and in 2006, for better or worse, but it was entirely taken away actually and shifted over to us as a responsibility, and we have been doing those audits ever since. But I would welcome I bet you a lot of department directors are rolling their eyes right now, but if there were any department that wanted to take on that responsibility, I would welcome it. So we could just do economic development. I would welcome the scrutiny and someone else doing it and all of that, but they're all
well, maybe that's something
crazy busy.
That can take to the mayor and suggest and see what we can do to help.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've got the city attorney that would like to make a comment.
Later on in your agenda, you have the executive order approving the UDA. There are strengthening provisions in the UDA for the collection of income taxes, for the responsibility on the developer to place in their contracts and to post on all the job sites the requirement for income tax payment and reporting to the Treasury Department. So that has been strengthened in this latest draft of the UDA.
Let me just add to that. I certainly completely agree with that, and there's just one other component, is the monitoring that comes along with it will be far more intense, what I was referring to. We are responsible for that. We are going to do it. But I don't know how else to say it. Like everybody in life, we will do less economic development doing that. And maybe that's right, and that's what we should be doing, and we are going to do it. But I only, like every department, only have so many people, and this is all we can do. We're going to monitor those. It's significantly more work on our behalf, which is fine. Yeah. But it's a lot of work.
I think it's something that can be discussed among administration and LEAP and council. There are ways to explore things. It doesn't have to be written in stone. So we'll figure it out.
I think we do a good job at it, basically. But
we have Councilmember Jackson and Councilmember Hussein, but I will say when we were working through trying to either come up with an ordinance or to make some changes to the Universal Development Agreement, at one time Labor had indicated, working with Price Dobernick, that they might be willing to help with the monitoring because that's something that they already do for a number of job sites. So,
We inserted that in some agreements, and I believe what you might be referencing is they knew of a firm that specialized,
yes,
and I think we actually inserted that in some
Yes, we did.
agreements. I apologize, I can't quite remember. But of course, it's a firm that has to be paid for to do that. They don't do it free. They had to be paid. And naturally, the question was, well, who's going to pay them?
right. Councilmember Jackson, then Councilmember Hussein.
Thank you, Madam President. So we're all pretty much council people and people that generally support economic development. You know, we all probably put it in our campaign, we support economic development. And for the most part, you know, we all supported the project since I've been here. But I'm just kind of trained to think about both sides. So if there's Lansing's, what really caught my attention is when you said, would it be worse, our financial situation would be worse than it is, because it's bad now, and we all know it. So when you say worse, I'm like, oh, wow. But at the same time, when I think about that, there's only a certain few ways to put into the pot and increase our revenue, our general fund, all those things. And one of them would be the taxes that we actually get returned to our fund. So I guess when we talk about the time length, like 15 years is an average one, where's our negotiation to maybe make it sooner so that we can get it sooner, because we want our money to increase sooner, because we're in a crunch. So the longer it is, I guess, is there a way to, and then my next question is there a way to get like incremental increases, or is it all or nothing?
I love the question. Other states, the solution has been what they call super TIFs. And that is a TIF that doesn't, like ours, our TIFs capture property and personal property and real property. And what TIFs do, and typically in a lot of other states, is also captures sales tax and income tax and other, I forget there's even other taxes. In other words, with capturing all those taxes, while it's even more brutal, it can reduce a 15-year TIF to a 5-year TIF, because you have so much more money to capture and just get it over with, is the theory. And, you know, I don't know what the answer is, but there has been, just Michigan does not allow that kind of. I would also say that sometimes I think that our revenue woes, especially to cities, get, you know, incentives is really the typical target, frankly, by right and left the last 10, 15 years even now. When the real issue is, and I guess this is somewhat of a political statement, but it's revenue sharing, and it's
It's not a
tax
political
policy.
statement, that's reality.
And it's also tax policies that have been instituted at the federal and state level, and I'll try to stop there and not let my opinion get too far beyond that, and I'll let you guess. But I mean, I think there are real reasons why a municipality is very short of revenue, and I think it has killed Michigan, to be frank about it, that if people don't like the place that they're living, it makes it really tough on all of us to have economic development, businesses, and to have people move here, which actually is the only way to generate new revenue for growth. And so we have absolutely shot ourselves in the foot. And just to be frank about it, everyone's frustrated. I think they know the elephant in the room, whether it's a citizen or whether it's you at a dais or even someone like me, maybe surprisingly to some people. And what do we have left to blame or to try to criticize or fix? And the only thing we really have in front of us that you have control over is economic, you know, is the incentives, right? You're actually approving those to these developers and businesses. And really, I think that's really what's going on is we collectively, who else do we blame? What else do we go after? And I think it's counterproductive to revenue, actually, as I've explained. That's my opinion again. But the real problem is, and I'll add a third thing, is a complete lack of local control. I mean, most other states, who are very red states, by the way, Texas, Oklahoma, absolutely can have super TIFs. And then not only that, but they can impose their own local sales tax, their own local additional income taxes, and have their own local bonds to do economic development, no problem at all. They have so many more local tools. In Michigan, we're absolutely paralyzed. You are completely paralyzed by the policies of state government the last 30 years and federal government. We can't make a move. Sorry about that.
Councilmember Hussein?
I think somewhere in there was a partial answer to my question. I agree. I think, I wish we could do a whole lot more in terms of economic development in the city of Lansing. And I know that municipalities across the nation do a whole lot more and spend a whole lot more money. Folks that maybe have bigger general funds, more buying capacity, et cetera. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I could totally be wrong. Is it not true that municipalities that do have more money, do have more buying capacity, often will go in and take possession of these brownfields, these really difficult to develop properties, and actually do the demo themselves and actually do the environmental abatement themselves that you contract out for? And maybe I'm wrong. And then market, sell, set up a TIF, and then reimburse themselves so that they can pay the debt service. Does that happen? I thought it did.
Well, when we bring in developers from outside of the state, Continental Development at Red Cedar, we were very involved in Harbor Bay from Chicago and downtown East Lansing as well. And in both of those cases, those developers were stunned at the lack of tools that we had available. For instance, again, agree or disagree. I mean, maybe they shouldn't be doing this in Columbus, Ohio, but Lansing, Michigan is not Columbus, Ohio. Columbus, we were the same size of 70 years ago. Well, now they're at 2.1 million people. We're still, where we are. And, but they have sales tax and income tax, and they impose that, and they turn it right around, and they buy property. For Frank Cass, my God, at Continental, how many times I had to endure the screaming in my office of Frank Cass explaining to me that how much Columbus does for him in actual purchasing of property. Again, agree or disagree, but I'm just telling you, it's a competitive world, and people can make choices out there. And so and another factor is, and then this would be very controversial, but Michigan removed eminent domain. And that was another and is a very common tool to this day in many, many other states, how they do economic development. They still don't have much problem with saying we think there's a greater community good, and a property that is absolutely for 30 years has been, a junkyard, and the person doesn't care, and we're going to take it. We're going to take it. We're going to pay a market value plus another 150% or whatever, calculation. And we're going to sell it ourselves. Forget it. We're sick of it. That's how most cities really redevelop their riverfronts, by the way, is through eminent domain. By the way, Jim, I think eminent domain was the primary, when it was still available in Michigan, was the only way to clean out the porn places on Michigan Avenue for the most part. In fact, I know it was.
Yes, we did.
I mean, that was eminent domain. If we had eminent domain today, there's a lot more things we could be doing as a city. Again, I realize how controversial it can be in some people's minds, but I believe in the greater community good. If everything was the way it was today, with about 10 porn places on Michigan Avenue and not a baseball stadium there is nothing we could have done about it. It would have remained the way it was. And someone's going to tell me that the city or community is better off by those people having their property rights instead of what's better for the community? I'm brave enough to say, no, it isn't. The community comes first. So these are the obstacles that we all face, and this is, again, to bring it all back, why in reasonable ways incentives, I think, in pretty rare instances are a tool that we use. I'll also note that sometimes a criticism has been, you guys never say no. Is there anything you ever say no to? I think people should know that we say no all the time at this level with the mayor's office. We don't bring no's to you. We don't want you having to face that kind of debate. We interact. Many projects we say no to through due diligence. You'd be surprised how many, maybe 50% of projects we deal with, we've actually, again, we're not on our own. We interact with the mayor's office, who's ever the mayor, and make these decisions collectively. Maybe sometimes talk with some of you individually, depends, and make decisions that way. But we really only try to bring projects that are of a likelihood to be a yes.
Just to put a bow on this so we can move on to the next topic, At one point, other communities, and I don't believe in Michigan, were able to add a public safety fee onto part of the brownfield collection. I know that's something that you and I have talked about before. Is there any movement on that in the legislature?
I have not heard any discussion about that at all.
Okay, all right. Okay, so where would you like to go next in our world?
Well, how about attraction? I've been asked about attraction sometime, that I've put some thoughts
Yes.
together about attraction, which is a really tough part of our business, an entirely different part of our business from incentives and well, really 95% of successful economic development in the here and now is about expansion and retention. It isn't about attraction. It's about growth from within. It's organic. And maybe business attraction can be broken down into two categories. There's sort of big attraction and maybe smaller attraction. With regard to attraction efforts themselves, it takes enormous time, energy, and resources and money, with really, to be frank about it, very little return. You have to be super smart about it, a lot of techniques and strategies to be very effective in attraction. Again, I think there's sort of a big picture attraction effort and then maybe smaller attraction efforts. The city of Lansing greatly benefits from both approaches, and LEAP presents both of those different kind of strategies. I'll try to articulate those, starting off with maybe the smaller, that's not really a great word to refer to it, but maybe a different kind of strategy, smaller kinds of attraction that I think is more prominent here in the city of Lansing. And actually today at Development and Planning and tonight at City Council is a great example of where nearly all of economic development is coming from, which is not attraction, but it's Lake Trust, Temple Club, Corridor Improvement Authorities, Allen Place, City Market, Home Street School. I mean, what a classic example by serendipity, but there it is on your agendas tonight to discuss, but none of that is attraction, and that is where most of our efforts come from. And the hundreds of hours, literally, on each one of those projects, more in some cases, over years. Red Cedar Project, 8 years of work. YMCA,
Yeah.
what would it be, 12 years possibly, unimaginably. Oliver Towers, 5 or 6 years maybe. Beelan Buildings, Chris, 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 on those. In Southwest Lansing, Councilman Hussein, you've been here 4 years already. 3 years, excuse me, going on fourth year, excuse me. At the very beginning, I mean, really talking about Southwest Lansing and putting, without any question, hundreds of hours. The only person who's put in more hours is, I think, you. In fact, I know that by far, double, triple. But these are all organic. It is not attraction, and that is where the most bang for our buck is, I believe. Another very effective and maybe, more effective way is a way to put it, sort of still talking about smaller kinds of attraction efforts, but are more effective in a city, certainly use resources, our limited resources, in a wiser way. But of course, we do those development projects. For instance, the 600 block was a gas station in downtown Lansing in a parking lot, for the most part. And so we together approved incentives and did a brownfield project. Well, look what we attracted out of it, if you will, a Meijer store in a hotel. I mean, that's a far. Could I have gone out, could we have gone out on your behalf and recruited Meijer to the city? Like cold call Meijer and recruit them to be, I don't think so really. But being part of a development project is just in my judgment, a better, more effective vehicle really to recruit. The Red Cedar project, well, obviously we're doing what we're doing incentive-wise and the sale of the land and so forth. They are the ones, I could have never done it, but they have recruited 2 really, really high-quality, fine hotels. Those are not just the standard 4-story things you're seeing around town. I mean, these are really high-end, very good quality hotels. I'm just admitting it to you. I wouldn't have known where to start, how to do it. Maybe better economic developers are out there that really know how. I don't think so. But retail restaurants. There's going to be a Riverview restaurant. The Allen Center, I mean, look what we've all done together with the Allen Center, but how many businesses have they, or entrepreneurs that they've recruited? Way better than I or we ever could. Rio Town, Old Town, you know, great stories, Main Street, well, one of them is the Main Street program, and tremendous people in Rio Town the last 10 years, 30 years in Old Town. But the fact that a lot of people don't talk about is nearly every building in Old Town, and basically nearly all of them in Rio Town, have all received some sort of incentive from you, from us, together. Look how many businesses and entrepreneurs they have recruited, attracted, if you will. I think, you know, Scott Gillespie's buildings, could we have gone out and cold called and attracted someone by the name of Strange, I don't drink coffee, Strange Matters, thank you. I mean, I do not drink coffee. I know it's pathetic. I have a Diet Coke. But so I just think these are more in the long run, short and long run. And yet you're thinking, well, but what about the big guys out there? I mean, shouldn't we be doing that? And the answer is yes, but you're doing it in a different, more effective way. You're doing it through the support of Regional LEAP, as are the other municipalities throughout our community. And so, let me say one more thing about maybe the smaller recruitment just for a minute. And yet there are targeted areas, for instance, the Kmart building on South Cedar Street. We actually are spending quite a bit of time. We actually are engaged in multiple parties right now on that from the building end and multiple tenants. A lot of it we can't talk about, and you know, I'm going to admit to you, some of it we were proactive, a lot of it we're being more reactive, but even the reactive, I think we should give ourselves somewhat of a break. It's because of other good activity in South Lansing, I would say a rise in the temperature and credibility of South Lansing right now. Economic times are good, you know, so you got a variety of, but Chris has worked hard. But let me give you another example.
Before you move to your next example, Councilmember Garza raised his hand.
Thank you, Madam President. So when you say about Kmart, I know you said that you couldn't talk too much about it, but could you tell me, is there anybody other than U-Haul that you're dealing with?
I want to be careful in saying dealing with right here.
Okay.
We've had, there's been additional interest by some, and we are we're handling it just appropriately to not get in someone else's business or interfere at all with other relationships or obligations that are going on right now with the building.
Okay. Well, maybe you and I can have a sidebar someday.
Maybe we could.
Diet Coke, coffee.
Yep.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. Another example is CB Mining. So CB Mining is a company that through LEAP, Regional LEAP, was at I forget what, trade show or conference or something. But we were interacting, it was another staff member actually, now that I think about it, in our entrepreneurial unit, but was contacted by these guys that said, hey, we're from Columbus, Ohio, and we have this new vision for removing rare earth minerals from computer keyboards and appliances, and to do it in a more healthy, environmentally sound, recycling kind of way. And we've been beginning to work in 2 other cities in Michigan, and we said, really, give us a shot. So Chris came, or the person in my office who brought it back gave it to Chris, because they said specifically we're interested in the city of Lansing, if I recall, or maybe we did a regional site search for, I can't remember, but one way or another we sorted it down to the city of Lansing. Chris spent 10 months or so, and really would be hundreds of hours. Only 40 days ago, Chris was pacing back and forth on a 4 o'clock Friday afternoon when everyone wanted to go up north on a hot summer day, and he's with a bank president in town finalizing a bank loan to this company, of one of which the EDC was going to fill a bit of a gap, or however you want to characterize it, but you know, and this is my example though of, so a lot of time, huge amount of time Chris spent on that. And then cruelly, as is the world, about 4 weeks ago, we got an email to Chris, and the guy said, I've quit the company and I'm outraged, and you know, they've decided to do in Columbus, and I'm very sorry, but the deal's off, right? Pretty much about it. He didn't do anything wrong. Maybe the company didn't do anything wrong, but it's just an example of you have to be really careful about out there recruiting and spending somebody's major time, especially when the time is precious and limited. You can spend 10 months on something like that and come up with a goose egg. Now, of course, another time maybe you land it, but at least you aren't, you know, that's where regional leap comes in maybe a little bit more. So,
Bob,
Yes.
to talk about regional leap and the fact that you are receiving money from other municipalities to do their economic development.
well, no, not exactly, but
Well, they're members. Some of
Can
them are
explain that,
members of
yep.
LEAP, correct?
can I clarify that just a
Yeah.
little bit?
Absolutely.
So LEAP has signed a contract for 8 years now, thank you, to be the City of Lansing's Economic Development Department and staff. We are in a firewall. We save you a lot of money and provide you superior services. We are literally your Economic Development Department. But then there's Regional LEAP, which is the Clinton, Eaton, and Ingham County, and nearly all municipalities throughout the 3 counties gives either 15,000 or 3,000, depends on whether you're above or below 10,000 population. And we do regional things of which the City of Lansing and all other municipalities benefit from. And one of them is attraction, another is entrepreneurialism, another is placemaking. And I'd like to describe those a little bit to you.
Well, my question is when you've got somebody that comes to you and isn't sure where they want to go, and you have these other groups, other municipalities out there.
Right.
What portion of you is trying to make sure that they're settling in Lansing versus Delta?
Right. So
As an example.
Yes. So about 5% of our work is really in that attraction area. But when it does occur, it comes through LEAP through a variety of pipelines. The more pipelines, contacts we can have, the better it is. If it comes through a site consultant, typically they say, we're looking for 30 acres, we need it to be industrial, you know, whatever. They all have different assignments, and they always tell, we don't tell them, they tell us. And we're looking for, I mean, you know right away, they'll pretty much greenfield, or would they be open to urban? And it depends on the kind of use. Perhaps a corporate headquarters, an IT firm is much more amenable to an urban setting than a 30-acre, you know, very, very large manufacturing facility. That's just the reality. For one thing, you don't have land for the most part that's available like that. So it really depends on many, many factors. Typically, we never make the decision. It's either we want to do a regional search, and the second component is what door did it come through? Did it come literally to the City of Lansing through whatever mechanism or vehicle, I should really say, or platform, but did it come to the City of Lansing? If it did, and for sure if it's a City of Lansing business already, it's absolutely in that City of Lansing box. So in 8 years, I can't think of a single time where there's been really any serious confusion about that. If it's a regional examination of all the region for a place, that's what it is. If it's the City of Lansing, we transfer it right over the City of Lansing, just as if it were a Delta Township project, it's Delta Township, and we let them get to work on it. So it's worked out very, very well.
Okay.
Yep.
You-
So
Go ahead. please.
yeah, in the attraction efforts, though, it's really to do the sort of big, you know, you want to attract something big. There's a variety of ways. It requires at a minimum a $300,000 budget to do business attraction, big business attraction, to go out and recruit a corporate headquarters or a major big something, you know, whatever that is. And thankfully, right now, we have our hands in a lot of big things. But we spend, the things that you really need are, you have to have a real continuity of staff over years to build a relationship. You have to have very, very sophisticated and unfortunately extremely expensive software systems. You have to have a huge major travel budget, of which I don't get to participate in. Keith Lambert does in our office. But you need all these things to even have a shot You have to develop these relationships with site consultants, with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, and then there's the reality of what is it that you're pitching. Is it really Lansing versus Columbus, or Lansing versus Beijing, or Lansing versus Berlin? It is not. Now when we're pitching the region, we use Lansing, by the way. I am relentless about that. Anytime we're outside of our borders, it's Lansing. And so we portray ourselves as Lansing. But the fact is, what we really mean by competing on that global stage for big companies, they don't understand our borders whatsoever. They have no idea what Delta Township or City of Lansing or MSU even border-wise really means. What they do understand is what we present to them, and I tried to send around some literature that portrays that. You'll see Lansing all over that stuff. And you'll hear me give this same, if you're just wondering, this same speech in St. John's, in Mason, Delta Township, Meridian Township. It's the same speech to everybody. But it's Lansing, but you have to put together all of the choices in our very small community. The facility for rare isotope beams, the Broad Museum, our baseball stadium, the professional soccer team, Auto Owners Insurance, which is in Delta Township, our power station with the accident fund in it, small towns within a very close proximity, the riverfronts, the river trails, the parks, Michigan State University, LCC West, their training facility. I mean, outside of our little border, that is what people think of as Lansing. And that is borderless. It's virtual in a way. And so we have to picture and paint that all together, which is why we all put in $15,000 from your perspective, but everyone puts in their amount to put together a pool of money so we can really have a $300,000 budget to portray ourselves. Now, the trade-off is sometimes you win and sometimes you don't. It's not up to us. It's utterly up to what it is out there. And I hope we're going to announce a huge industrial plant here shortly that we've worked on for a year. Well, they are looking at scores of acres of industrial property. And they want to be, typically, this one wants to be, it's 100 or so trucks a day, about 100 yards from getting on and off an interstate ramp. They don't want to go by schools and school bus stops. And I don't think you do either, by the way, or have trucks rumbling through neighborhoods. So it's a trade-off, and they know that before we ever need to make any decisions about Greenfield, Delta Township versus City of Lansing. We have a contract with the city and not with Delta. You know, and it automatically sorts itself out perfectly. But a call center, an IT firm, a corporate headquarters, you know, those are entities that are way more interested in urban centers, so we can recruit those. But beyond all that, we add additional regional activities, of which Lansing takes huge advantage of, so do the other municipalities, but you way more than the others, because you're so much bigger than the others and you have so much more available as a pitch, really. But we just finished a very expensive regional defense study, and this will benefit all the businesses in our 3-county area, but as it will businesses right here in the city. Locke has just added 500 jobs, really quite good paying jobs. We have the Regional Brownfield Assessment Grant, which we did in partnership with the City of Lansing and the entire region, a really unique way to make sure that we all get the money. That'll jumpstart scores of projects in the City of Lansing, but it is available to everyone in the region. But of course, the City of Lansing has the vast majority of the brownfield sites and potential projects, so it's going to work out great for everybody. We were with Bill Riskey's great job at development and planning, but we were super involved at the beginning. But the City of Lansing was the very first certified redevelopment readiness community in the state of Michigan as a city. Right now, LEAP regionally put in applications for what this MEDC is calling, Michigan Economic Development Corporation, for what they're calling the Site Readiness Program. And we put in 4 sites. And all 4, we were 4 for 4. All 4 sites were approved by the MEDC. That means you get a feature video and an infusion of actual money to do planning and even maybe later infrastructure work. 2 of those 4 sites in the City of Lansing. Why? Did we favor City of Lansing? No. Did we have the City of Lansing? No, it works out perfectly. The City of Lansing's so much bigger. It's a site at the airport and the Mr. Sumba at along I-96, which is kind of an interesting potential green area for industrial development, actually. We'll see, but that's what this grant is about. It's studying. The other two sites were in Leslie and Weberville, I believe. So, I mean, this is another way of helping the city. Opportunity zones has been City of Lansing dominated. Mayor Shore has been amazing on that, but so has Maya Num. And the City of Lansing has shined all over the country. And I'm skeptical of opportunity zones themselves right now as being, a true attraction tool. I'm not seeing it that way for a variety of reasons, but regardless, a lot of good has come out of it. Primarily, we got to promote City of Lansing all over the country to developers and showcase ourselves to other communities. Smart zones, it's not talked about a lot, but you have a major smart zone. And if you didn't have that smart zone at the Corporate Research Park, McLaren had a choice, actually, where their new hospital would be built. I happen to know where the other site was, and it wasn't in the city. And that smart zone helped, but it's a regional smart zone. It's shared by Ingham County and the city of East Lansing. And ironically, you talk about fairness or not, the city of East Lansing pays the entire TIF. The city of Lansing hasn't paid any TIF in, unfortunately, a decade or so, and yet the city of Lansing gets a lot of advantage out of it. But all that being said, even in big attraction efforts, we really do try to think about the developments, how the developments, a good example is McLaren. We have been meeting with McLaren faithfully for 2 years, and we really think we have some excellent strategies about what will be the former sites. That strategy right now is not just a wide sort of typical real estate, let's just put a sign up and sort of advertise it around the country for whatever. It's much, much smarter. And it's because of McLaren really, really cares. And I think a lot of you know what I'm referring to about the strategy. LEAP has been deeply involved, so has the Lansing Chamber. These things are total regional partnership. It's really not a city project, either the new hospital or in the med tech hub that we want to build all around that. We want to bring in particle accelerator companies. We want to recruit medical device manufacturing. So does McLaren. So does MSU. And a lot of that property is City of Lansing. Some of it's East Lansing. Some of it even, I guess, is Lansing Township. But we need to think about infrastructure and marketing. But these are examples of, for only your $15,000, and everyone else's, by the way, is we can put together big pockets of budget at LEAP Regional where the city can still take great advantages of it from an attraction standpoint. Another way of attracting is, I just wanted to mention our entrepreneurial programming as well is, just in the last year, let me mention some of these names right here in the city of Lansing that you're only paying for through that $15,000 to Regional LEAP, but is Menu Bubble, Saddleback Barbecue, Sleepwalker, Change Media, Augmented Reality Utility, Black Pine, Interactive Interactions. Those are just the tip of the iceberg. We're touching real starting small businesses, entrepreneurs all the time. And we do that across the entire region. I'm not favoring City of Lansing. It's just that the City of Lansing is big. You kind of naturally, if you see my point, get a lot of the sort of benefit from all this. But beyond all that, we have the hatching events, which are held in the City of Lansing, and many, many, many of both the participants and winners are from the City of Lansing. This Friday, we are playing a major role in Lansing Community College's Black Business Expo and Pitch Competition. I don't know if a lot of people know, but Regional LEAP every year holds a Newcomers, New Ideas business pitch competition at the Refugee Development Center. We started an InsurTech program, which is one of the few in the country. Only Des Moines, Minneapolis, Silicon Valley, Hartford have these recruit high-tech entrepreneurs from around the world to engage in insurance sectors. There's no way the City of Lansing or Delta Township or Grand Ledge or Meridian Township could have done any of these programs by themselves, budgetary or resource-wise. But when we put a little bit of our money together in Regional Leap, in other words, look at the bang for the buck that you're getting, both from your contract, but also from Regional Leap. But that statement is true for the other municipalities as well. And the Youth Expo is an amazing event. I'm certain that we're the only, but we also do placemaking. I don't know about you, but I think the mural on the elevator shaft on Grand Avenue is kind of magnificent. And if you come from outside the city off of 496 every morning and turn left onto the one-way Grand, from 496 all the way down, you have a rainbow of color basically that just makes you feel good about the city. But I hope everyone knows that that was a LEAP regional project actually, and we've done a lot more. With regard to placemaking, the riverfront itself, I think you should know, and it hasn't been publicized very well, but the Lansing's Brownfield Authority, via the TIF, so we get reimbursed. But I mean, the Brownfield Authority, through Chris's work and Carl's, put in $343,000. When you're on the beach or the lighting, or we're thankful to Delta Dental and the Community Foundation. They put in even more money, but I mean, the city put in a lot of money too. We have a diversity and inclusion program. And then finally, I'll just end by saying the city is something you absolutely know, the city is very complicated from an administrative and financial perspective, and these programs are complicated. And under the City of Lansing contract, $500,000, 1.5 persons total. It's spread more broadly than just literally 1.5 persons. But the administrative upkeep of, so a developer, let's keep picking on Pat Gillespie because I love him. So the Meyer project, Pat, a lot of incentives and approvals, but remember at the end of the day, all what Pat does is just pay his taxes. So he got the incentives, he has to worry about doing the actual project, I don't, so that's the trade-off. But a year and a half from now, the project will be totally done, and you know what, that's about it, but not for us. I and we have to monitor your Treasury Department, assessing department, my few precious folks that I have here have to, summer and winter, twice a year, go back and audit and figure out every one of those brownfields, make sure they're right, we're capturing the right amount, how much is left in eligible activity to reimburse, to get it all right. And Chris is, I know, saying right now, and that's not even nearly all of it, but it's as simple as I can explain it, and make sure that that they pay their taxes, that they get reimbursed the proper amount. And guess what? Yeah, sometimes for several decades, 15 to 20 years, it doesn't go away for us. I mean, I think you get the point, but when people want us to do a lot of economic development and different things, I love it. Please, yes, I keep asking, keep telling us to. That's our passion for sure, but also I have to do this admin, and it's overwhelming, and now we'll be doing even more admin, and we have $500,000 total, so I'm not pleading poverty or asking for more money at all. I'm proud of these folks, actually. You have an incredible staff, and you have more staff than to be frank about it, than you could budget on your own, and I think getting double the services as well.
Okay, Bob, with that, are there any additional questions for Bob at this time? Councilmember Hussein?
I'll just ask one, and I'd like to have the conversation go all night, to be quite frank, but I think economic development is that important. I do have a question, though, with regards to, we talk a lot about attraction, we talk a lot about supporting startups. What about business retention? And I guess, the facade project, as an example, was born from discussions with you, small business owners, particularly along South MLK, to be quite frank, that were having some of the same conversations that we had tonight. Why are we always giving these, huge tax incentives to, but yet small businesses that have been operating out in corridors for years don't get? And we know that the toolbox just isn't there for that type of thing. But with that being said, it's the same thing with corridor improvement authorities. We know that's about retention, it's about attraction. But I think of, as an example, what's happening on South MLK right now. Where we have an MDOT project that is very close to putting several businesses under, to be quite frank. I spent all day Friday. It was my day off. I spent all day talking to small business owners up and down the corridor. And for a couple months now, they've been 30, 40, 50% down on their monthlies. And we know that small businesses are always a slow month or two from closing their doors.
Yeah.
Is there any intensive effort before we know there's going to be a project like that? And that's been a disaster of a project, to be candid. But with that being said, is there any effort, and again, it's about resources, I get that, but to coordinate with the LEDC, Economic Development and Planning, Public Services, to do a little bit of outreach to ensure, and I know it's an MDOT project, but to make sure that we're coordinating with MDOT, small business, or property owners in general, so that information is forthcoming, number one, but number two, we also know what those businesses want.
Right.
What precipitated me going to the corridor was me actually finding out that one of our businesses is closing their doors, partly because of the project, and then there are several others that are close. Is there any?
Well, I wish we could talk the whole, so I think it's a fantastic, and it's pertinent, I think I know why, today even, right, it's a pertinent question. And so a couple thoughts on it. One is retention. Yes, Regional LEAP and the City of Lansing LEAP, we do retention and in conjunction with the MEDC. But it is mostly about the bigger businesses toward more the top of the pyramid. And incentives are generally like that too. Right now, we're really in the running for, a business with 500 jobs. That's a lot of customers for a lot of small business. And so you just get way, way more bang for your buck. It's just sort of, agree or disagree, but that's basically, but nonetheless, you're right. The heart and soul of job creation is small business. But there's just hundreds, there's 10,000 small businesses in the city of Lansing plus. It's a very difficult situation, and retail is brutal on top of that. What is it, 70% failure rate among retail? So I'm not being glib about it, but there is, to some extent, retail, especially real small retail, comes and goes. It doesn't mean that they're not the salt of the earth and really what really matters. They are, but it's difficult for us to, from a programmatic and resource perspective, to really get at it. Now, South MLK, I think the best thing we've done is we've been smart about what we can handle. Can we really go one-on-one to hundreds, if not thousands of bit? We cannot. We're not real estate agents. We don't have the resource. But what we can do, and I think you, Mayor Short, and you have been very smart, what we can do is think about programs and uplifting sort of the tide, if you will, the corridor improvement authorities. Super smart. The opportunity zones, one way or another, a good idea. It's a layer of some sort of attraction effort that is on there. The facade program, if we keep at it every year, after 10 years, it will be very much added up. The roads, I drove way in South MLK about 8 months ago to one of the stores that you may be referencing. And I'm not kidding, that road was almost impassable. So I'm not sure what is. I understand the frustration of the construction, but you know what? I'll admit it to you. Even in my mind, I wanted to go down there to go to that business and spend my money down there. But even I had to say, am I really going to drive back here again? So what was really chasing away customers? At least this is a fix. And I know it's been brutal, but what was the alternative? The road was that bad down there where I think a lot of people are saying, I'm not going down there again. At least now they're going to return because of the construction that goes on. So we do retention visits to small business? We do not. We just absolutely, I wouldn't know where to begin and where to end, and they come and go in great part. It's the nature of the beast. It's a reality. But we can be smart about overall overlapping programs, your work and the work of other council members, but frankly, yours in particular in Southwest Lansing. I'm just saying, remember 3 years ago during the summer, LEAP started the action plan. Had so many town hall meetings. It all adds up, and you have to keep at it. But I think you have to, rather than specific business, it's a little bit of a trap. It's a little bit of a trap, in my opinion. What we have to think about is the overall betterment of the area and a lot of smart ways save and improve and retain small business that way, council member, is my ultimate answer. And I think you and the council and Mayor Shore have been really innovative in that the last 2 years.
Okay, we'll finish up with Councilmember Dunbar, and then we're going to go into the executive order. Councilmember Dunbar.
Thank you. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate you and the work that you do in the office, and the fact that you do wear it on your sleeve, and you are an amazing cheerleader for these incentives and the city of Lansing and development in general, and you make it easier to understand for folks. And I think that your passion is obvious and palpable, and I need you to know that. I appreciate you and everyone else in your office for the work that you do.
I really appreciate that, because like every city department, I think civil servants and all your employees of the city are nothing short of heroic. I happen to know, like you do, what they face every day. And my staff is, I just try to hire, it's not a cliche, the people who are twice as smart as me, but I do insist that they have the same passion as I do. I grew up in the city, born in the city, as you know, so it matters. Thank you for saying that. That makes my day.
Very quickly, Councilmember Washington.
Bob, I want to thank you for coming, and I like that you come at least twice a year. I think there is such a misconception and it's nobody's fault, but there's such a misconception of what happens in this city. We have over 10,000 small businesses in this city. To hear some folks talk, you'd think we had none. And I know that you work relentlessly. I've been in your office several times, and nobody's playing around. But it's so encouraging to hear the things that are happening in the city, and I think we need to hear it periodically to remember. I do remember where we were. I do remember Michigan Avenue with nothing but pouring shops. I remember Lansing, and we have come so far. And you all have had a great part in how far we've come, and I'm excited to see where we go.
Thank you for saying that. I think anybody who has run into somebody who is sort of returned back visiting or moving after 10 or 15 years, I mean, I think it's universal that all of them say, wow. I mean, I remember the power station a few 12 years ago had a smokestack on it and a coal pile next to it, and contamination going into that river like mercury crazy, and a parking ramp over Grand Avenue that created a tunnel that no human being wanted to go through. And it was nothing but, other than Lansing Center, total gravel. And, okay, the city market was there, but sadly, anyway, you know the story. Thank you for saying that. Yep.
All right, thank you, but I want you to stay right there, Bob, because we're going to go into the executive agreement with the Universal Development Agreement.
This I know, I would really point you to the administration and the city attorney on this.
Okay, so, Mr. City Attorney, did you want to go over the points of the changes in the agreement with us?
Yes.
And let me first add, for council members' sake, this is an executive agreement, an executive order that does not require council to make or approve in any way, shape, or form. The purpose of this is for us to understand it. This has been a question that we've had out there on the Universal Development Agreement. We've looked at ordinances to pass to try to capture some of our thoughts, and I believe those have been captured in the Universal Development Agreement. Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Madam President. So the agreement, the purpose of this agreement or its application is used for development projects using economic incentives. So it does not apply to projects where you transfer real estate, such as Red Cedar. Those would be covered by a comprehensive development agreement, which has to come back to council. So this is an executive order where the mayor will implement in connection with projects, performance measures, reporting, timelines, objectives, that type of thing. There are no direct city funds involved in this again, so it's with your typical economic incentives. And the basis for, or the base for developing this agreement is the old agreement that was in existence, but this agreement is restructuring that old agreement It also has been vetted through labor numerous times, through the Chamber of Commerce. It has been a work in progress for, I would say, 6 months or more, and to develop a perfect agreement that everyone has had a chance to comment on and to edit. And so that's the product right here. You have the agreement in front of you, and I'll just tell you in a couple words what each section is. Section 1 states the purpose of the agreement, the public policy behind the agreement. Section 2,
And that's on page 3.
I'm sorry, page 3, yes.
Okay.
Section 2, which is on page 4, is a list of the defined terms. So you might see project completion, project commencement throughout the agreement, and that's where you will find the definition of those terms or any other term that is set forth on page 4. Section 3 sets forth the applicant information.
On page 6,
I'm sorry, I will give you the numbers.
Jeremy,
Thank you, Madam
Councilmember.
So
Garza,
just
Barbara.
going back real quick about paying all required city income and property taxes. So is that gonna be, whose responsibility to find out, if, you know, they're not 1099s on the jobs, whatnot? Is that gonna be the Treasurer Department or?
Well, it's going to be in one of the sections I was getting to, where it's
Okay.
all on taxes, and all of that will be covered with it.
Okay.
So, section 3 is the applicant information, the information necessary for us to determine whether there's any violations or the persons are in default, things of that nature. Section 4 is on page 7, and this requires a description of the project itself, including the affected parcels, other incentives, duration. Also calls for the economic impact of the project, including the private investment, jobs created, and the annual wages. Section 5, which is on page 9, these pages contain the actual terms and conditions for project completion. These are the activities that the applicant must meet to continue to be eligible for the incentive and to reach that completion date that's defined earlier in the agreement. There are reporting requirements also required here. So you have a start, a finish, and these are promises of the developer for local job creation, payment of local taxes, and then these are the obligations in this section for the tax reporting. There's a requirement that every well, first of all, we have the applicant has to report, but then we have the obligation on the applicant to put in its contract with general contractors and subcontractors all the way down the line of the obligation to do the 1099s, to pay, to take withholding taxes and to pay. And then there's a procedure in that section also for coordinating this with the Treasurer's Office, and the Treasurer's Office is well aware of this.
And before you move on, Jim, I think the important thing on page 10 is the local labor preference and explaining what that is. So that's new to this document.
Local labor, yes, is starting on page 10, so the applicant agrees to contract with and employ as much local labor and Lansing-based firms as possible. And then you have regional labor requirements, state labor requirements. So what all this language says on page 10 is basically you start with local labor, and the definition of local labor is Lansing domiciled. And then if you can't, you have to report within 45 days to see if you can't make that commitment to fund, to staff the project. So then you give an explanation to LEDC, and then you move to the next phase, which is regional. If you can't fill it with regional labor, you move to the third phase, which is Michigan-based. So we not only have the requirements of using local labor, but there is also very stringent reporting requirements. And there's also posting on the Builders Exchange. You'll see a lot of this was dealt with the unions in putting this language together and vetted by the Chamber. Chamber hasn't approved all this, but they have vetted it, and they haven't stated any negative objections at this point. You have the commitment to pay city income tax and property taxes. That's on page 11. And then the teeth in all this begins around page 13. There are performance measures on 12, commitment to reports, all these things. So we have labor commitments, we have tax commitments, we have representations that have been made by the applicant to the city. If they fail in these regard, in any of these items, the city has the opportunity to declare the applicant in default, and you'll find that starting on page 13. Breach of applicant, and it also gives the city the ability to offer a cure period, 2 different kinds of cure periods if they don't. If there is a complete failure, the agreement can be revoked, but then the necessary steps would be to have to go to the State Tax Commission to actually revoke the incentive itself. So that's all found on page 13 and 14. Hopefully I've answered those questions.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. From all I can see, it's a great document from all I heard and everything, and that's great in my review, except a few things. One is that this is still an executive order that doesn't take council approval. So
Correct.
just the thought that everybody, you know, it was open, everybody had their say who would needed to be there. I wasn't necessarily approached by it, but that's fine because I don't have to be. But at the same time, I also know that my colleagues will represent council well. But there's a few things that I would point out, because if it had came to council, I would, of course, look towards basically, since this is a post 1.5 report error, meaning we know about the climate crisis. We all know about it, like as far as scientists and the leading scientists. It's gonna take us to look at even these simple things to try to incorporate it into the primaries. So the goals here, new investment, great thing, expand the tax base, great thing, creation of new jobs, great things, and also making sure that we do our part to mitigate the climate crisis and our carbon footprint. So what I would maybe see in there is even more incentives and encouragement for the developer to come with a building that is at the highest energy standards, which can be set by looking at the general practices. And our sustainability coordinator, when we get one, can also help with that, but making sure if they were able to reach that we would even try to help out as a city even more, just because we're trying to put our best foot forward and be the leaders in basically mitigation and transformation. So that's just my 2 cents. Had it came, I'll try to bring it up. Had I been approached by the mayor's office to work on it, I would have asked about that. But I understand it takes regular action. Because one last thing, for some of the things that need to happen for us to recover from exceeding 1.5 degrees is some of the laws aren't like zoning laws, different things that's already in place, the incentives for the fossil fuel industry, all the different things that's in place prohibit some of the things we do. So when we look at any piece, we should be thinking about the big picture, and that should be one of our goals.
Other comments? I just want a clarification, Councilmember Jackson. Council since 2008 had been looking at an ordinance on the books. The administration had that information. They had conversations that had happened prior to the mayor becoming mayor, but this was not worked out, nor were leadership or anyone from the council sitting down with the mayor on this executive order. This was based on information and things that the administration had gathered from concerns that we had. Some of these things are incorporated from some of the letters that we had asked be addendums to the Universal Development Agreement when before the changes were made that were added. So just so that you weren't left out. This is the mayor's prerogative, and I think one of the things that the chamber had recommended early on with this was instead of council doing an ordinance, they had wanted the previous mayor to amend the Universal Development Agreement to make those changes. And I think that's what was heard at that point. Yes, Councilmember Jackson.
And I appreciate that, and it makes a lot more sense, and I guess I didn't know who all was involved, but I figure since it involves local labor, everybody up here is very supportive, so we would at least know about that. But just to finish the point, so the 1.5 report, 2018, like, we are recently knowledgeable about what's going on, so whether something's been contemplated from 2008, like, our knowledge is increasing, so we need to account for that, that's all.
Well, we do have Mr. Tate here that I'm sure will take that, information back. And we do have Bob that as developments come forward, I know they do ask the question about lead and different things like that when they're looking at some of those retrofits for buildings. Councilmember Dunbar, and then the city attorney.
Thank you. One, I agree with everything that you just said. Two, having an executive order in place doesn't preclude council from going and doing our own, because we did start with the UDA, so we can always amend the one that we passed and to put that in there. I was gonna ask Bob, are there incentives right now for people who hit different standards on the LEED certification? If you commit to a gold standard, do you get a certain?
No.
No. And who would be, from a local standpoint, could we institute something like that, or would that have to be something at the state? Could we make that decision on our own, or?
I mean, of course you could make, well, I'm not an expert in this legally, but of course you could make whatever, additional rules you wish locally. As I said, I'm a huge environmentalist, and I couldn't agree more with you, actually, on a personal basis. We have to be careful about, the best thing you can do is have somebody choose to build a building in the city and not in a greenfield. That's the most profound environmental thing we could do. And then if you wanted to add on other things, but, developers and businesses make choices, and you're competing, and there's all of that too. I'm not discouraging you, I'm just.
Right, but obviously there's cost involved in the higher certifications, because the materials that they use.
And
are
my
not-
understanding from developers, I am not an expert in this area, but they typically think the actual cost of LEED certification, that they can mostly build their projects like that, but without the actual LEED certification. I don't know whether that's true or correct or anything. Most developers say that they can achieve most of that without the actual LEED certification. I don't know whether that's true or not, but that's mostly what, at least here in the Lansing area, that they do.
I've heard that too, and I'm just wondering if there's a way to, codify that in some way, if they document it, because it's the same thing with farmers. You can grow organically, but a lot of people will not choose to go through the federal certification process because it costs so much money just to have somebody stamp that you're doing what you're already doing. So I'm sure that we could revisit. Thank you.
Just for clarification, Councilmember Dunbar, when the previous executive order was passed, that very night council was going to adopt the Universal Development Agreement. We went ahead and adopted that even though the executive order had been done, which was in essence null and void because of the executive order. Now that this executive order is in place, we cannot create another document for LEAP to use with developers unless we were to adopt an ordinance. So I just want to clarify that. So we can't make changes to this document. We could create an ordinance, but I think, part of the agreement with a number was the chamber with labor the goal was to get the executive order done. So, all right. With that, I don't think, I'm sorry, Mr. City Attorney.
30-second wrap-up, I guess, as we're getting into count. So it does five things. Number one, it clarifies and restructures the old executive Universal Development Agreement. The second thing is strengthens the labor requirement and labor reporting. Third, it strengthens the tax reporting requirement. strengthens performance measures, and strengthens the remedies for default section. So those are the 5 main areas that are covered by this new executive order and this new universal development agreement.
So with that, I don't think we have anything else. We are going to adjourn. We will take 2 minutes to change things around, and then we will start the council meeting. We are adjourned.
Thanks a lot, Peter. Yeah, appreciate you guys' questions. Do you know Richard?